Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chair and today we are going to be looking at and reviewing the album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. Now, if you're new to the series or don't know the rules, I rate and review every album in my 200 collection in 3 categories: the context and creation of the album, the songs on the track list themselves, and finally, most importantly, the album cover. Jumping straight into the context, as on our last episode we looked at Rubber Soul. That was the transitioning period that I would say the Beatles were in 1965, kind of leaving the simple pop love songs, going into the more experimentation and production of psychedelic rock period of the late 60s. We saw more complex storytelling in the lyrics, more production from the Beatles themselves in the studio, and of course, more drugs. Now, following that, they released, into 1966, they released Revolver, which was even deeper into all 3 of those categories. We saw highlights on well-known tracks, Eleanor Rigby, Yellow Submarine, are big highlights from that album. Of course, it was another commercial success for the Beatles, and by the end of 1966, they were pretty much at their wits' end of the tough schedule. They didn't want to be strict contracts with EMI, with a record label and producing music. At the same time, they were done touring, so by the end of 1966, the Beatles would never really tour again, and they wanted to focus the whole time on the creation of this album. Now, at this time, Paul was being persuaded more by John Lennon, George Harrison, to do more drugs, LSD with them, to get more into a creative mindset, and that very much happened in this album. After he did it, he got the idea of Sgt. Pepper's, this kind of, goofy, cartoonish band. They used it as a way to step outside of the normal Beatles mindset that they went into in creating the album, and just kind of went throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. With more time and more production at Abbey Road Studios, the Beatles went full psychedelia, turning the studio into basically a man cave of creation for this. It was a huge hippie parade, and the tracks very much reflect that. Starting off the album with the introduction is the title track, which people see this as an early idea of a concept album. I don't really believe that. I don't see that throughout the tracks, and the Beatles themselves say that they didn't really see it as a concept album. Even more drug references in tracks like With a Little Help from My Friends and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Though Lennon says that wasn't what the song is about, it still definitely sounds like it has that psychedelia well produced within that track. That track became great inspiration for psychedelic and progressive rock genres that came following this album. Getting Better, Fixing the Hole, and Good Morning are all songs about seeing the light at the end of the tunnel or finding the good within the bad. Paul kind of gets his ditties in with his creative When I'm 64 and Lovely Rita. Deeper stories are within the track She's Leaving Home, and deeper Indian influences shown from my boy George Harrison on Within You Without You. And then of course John Lennon goes even farther within his mind to write songs like Mr. Kite and of course A Day in the Life. Once again, we see the Beatles furthering their own music ability and creativity, while at the same time, unknowingly possibly, furthering the ability of what music can sound like at that time and what it can become past this point. So with all that said, easily once again another 5 out of 5 in context for this album. I really enjoyed the creative process in this. I think with drugs and direction, the Beatles can make really good music, and this is prime example number 1 of that. Now to the tracks themselves. Out of the 13 tracks, I enjoyed 8 songs. I do enjoy the title track and the reprise. Those are both pretty good rocker songs. However, I do feel like the reprise should be at the end of the album. I don't know why. I get it, they want to say it's a concept album. I feel like if you want to help that argument, maybe put the reprise at the end. It'll help, and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds are classics to me. Absolutely love those tracks. A Day in the Life and Within You Without You are amazing soundscapes that I enjoy, while the tracks Lovely Rita is a deep cut, and She's Leaving Home is actually one of my favorite Beatles songs. I think it has one of the best lyrics, which is pretty crazy to say, but it's probably in my top 10 favorite Beatles tracks. Getting Better and Fixing the Hole are kind of songs that don't really stick out to me, and they kind of sound like the same thing, while Good Morning sticks out a little too much, and I just do not enjoy the sound of that at all. I think Pink Floyd ended up listening to that and then decided to create Seamus a few years later. Mr. Kite is pretty meh, and When I'm 64 is too cheesy even for me. So out of all of that, the total score in this category would be a 3.07 out of 5. Still a pretty good score, but definitely not my favorite when compared to the tracks of Rubber Soul. And finally, the last category is, of course, the album cover. And what more can I say than easily a 5 out of 5. I mean, this just has everything. It has colors, it has celebrities, it has cutouts, it has clay statues. It basically sums up one of the most iconic Beatles, propaganda you could ever see. It is them in full 60s regalia, and I think it just perfectly encapsulates the direction the Beatles were going in. I think it's an amazing photo. Not much more than I have to say than perfect 5 out of 5. Combining all the scores, that gives us a final score of 13.07 out of 15, which shockingly enough is once again a new high score in this series, topping Rubber Soul. That actually surprised me. I thought in my own head that I like Rubber Soul more than Sgt. Pepper's, but it looks like on this scale, this ekes it out just by a little bit. Really did not expect that going into the creation of this episode, but if you think one is better than the other, please let me know in the comments. That would be pretty interesting, because I think they're pretty neck and neck for me. And tune in next time as we look at the follow-up album to Sgt. Pepper's, Magical Mystery Tour by the Beatles. Once again, another creative, colorful album, and I'm actually even more intrigued now to get to this episode, because I wonder if this will beat the other previous albums we've ranked. I don't really know where this will land, because I also really enjoy this album. Once again, please like, comment, subscribe as always on this channel. Look for future content. Kai, Liana, Claire, Jackie, much love to you all as always, and we will see you in the next episode as we continue our Beatles dive.